Epsom is an SB2 town, and it has been a disaster in that town. Jeff Keeler is the town moderator there, and he says that the same thing happened at the deliberative session in Epsom. Very few people showed up. They passed a $10 million budget in 13 minutes with no questions asked. Out of the 67 attempts to repeal SB2, and again, it was Dorchester, Orange, and Enfield, there have been none in the past 14 years out of 50 attempts. So towns want to get rid of this, but it's voter apathy. Once you get this in, you can't have a discussion about why we're gonna, why this is bad for us, why we want to get rid of it. You can't get people into the polls to check, yes, get rid of this. So once we have it, get ready to live with it, because you're never, ever gonna get rid of it.
Also,
That's all I have.
hold on, Don, we've got Ralph, then we'll come back to you, Don.
Did either you or Fred have a cost on that machine?
No, I don't know, have any idea what it costs.
Did you get that?
No idea. I don't have an idea.
Well, we moved here, and my first town meeting was in '09 when we had the Milfoy deal, and you got the flavor of the town meeting. I mean, not used to it, we're city council, mayor type governments every place I've ever lived. But with the town meetings, it's part of the fabric of the community. And the one thing that everybody has the same opportunity to go to those town meetings. The town report is mailed to every household. They can be as informed or uninformed as they want to be, and go to that meeting if they feel that it's important. And yes, there's a core of people in Dunbarton that go to all of them. And my first year there, we knew maybe 5 or 6 people. And each year, it's gotten more and more and more. That we're knowing just about 60% of the people that are coming to the town meeting. But by having the town meeting, it gives us a voice. And just like tonight, you know, everybody's get a chance to talk if they want. And I think that it's important that we keep the town meeting and keep the fabric of our community. I mean, it's like the transfer station. I mean, on Saturday morning, that's the place to be if you want to politic or whatever, because you're gonna see more people there than any place else. And it's just part of it. When I have guests come, I take them to the transfer station, you know, because it's part of our routine. But the whole point is,
We get anything for the tourists on the
but, you know, SB2 is not good for Dunbarton. And I hope that everybody realizes that, to keep the fabric of the community. Because Dunbarton's becoming a bedroom community, and a lot of people, they just come in and, you know, they live here, but they work in Manchester or Concord, and they never come to Dunbarton Center. But they have the opportunity because they get the town report, and if they want to be part of the community, they can. So maybe there's only 150 or 300 or whatever the case may be come to town meeting, but we're the ones that care. We're the ones that you know, are driving the bus, you might say. Thank you.
Fred?
Yeah, like I said last night, it's like repeating everything here, but
I understand, that's why I tried to have it
Yeah.
together so we could have a joint session, but it didn't work.
my wife and I have attended every town meeting and school district meeting for the last 43 years. And we raised 3 little kids in this town. Now I've got teenage grandkids in this town. And we make provisions because we feel it's our civic duty to be there. And the meeting lasted all night. We stayed there all night. I worked out of town. I went to work the following morning because we feel this is our civic duty to be here and do this. And I think you're gonna be losing this when you, if you went to SB2. And I mentioned last night, we used to meet at the second floor of the town hall. We used to fight like cats and dogs up there. And you guys, most of them are too young to remember that,
I
but
remember it.
and Yeah, trouble is I can name everybody in there. And, but whatever was said and argued with, everybody stood up and had their say, you know, and, after town meeting, we went out and had coffee together. What happened at town meeting, stayed at town meeting, and that's the way we were. But my other problem I have with SB two, we have a cost for the deliberative session. Get the town officials here and everything else, the supervisors, the checklists and everything else. You have a month later, you got voting. You got the ballot clerks, you gotta be there, set up the town meeting like an election, you gotta have the town clerk, you gotta have the moderator and everybody else there. And then you gotta have somebody count all these things. Now, we have to have town elections the second Tuesday in March. That's why we have it the same day as town meeting. If you have your deliberative session, we're gonna say February, there's a certain time frame between, I think February and May, you can have something like that. And 60 days later, you're gonna vote. So you might have 3 meetings right there, because you're gonna have the elections of town officials and stuff. Now, also, if you just do the school, it's gonna be the same thing. You have this added cost. Now, okay, does the town wanna afford that? And no way, no how you're gonna get people to hand count everything, because it's physically impossible. They'll be there 2 days counting this stuff. So if you're buying machines, then you get an added cost. I have no idea what a machine costs, I don't even wanna know, because I'm from the old school. But anyhow, you know, I'm against this because of that reason, and like I said last night, there was one school district, meeting in New Boston, not meeting, but the deliberative session. They had 3 people decide what was gonna be on the ballot for 60 days later. And whatever they decided, you have yes or no, that's it, you have no say when you're in the ballot. So, that's where I have a big problem. The concept when they did this SB 2 30 years ago, the idea was good, but they found out, no, it's wrong, because nobody participates in the most important meeting, except for a few people. And the first year you might have quite a few people, then it goes down and down. It was just in the paper that Ware just had their deliberative session, and they complained it was like 16 people there. You know, so.
Well, that's one of my biggest fears, to be honest with you, is you see how many people are here just for this particular purpose. This is what I think a deliberative session would probably end up being for us if we went to SB two. You know, we got what, maybe 30, 40 people here max. So,
23.
I mean, to me personally, that's my biggest fear. I know everybody's had to say, as a citizen, even though I'm the chair here, I like to have my 2 cents here. I would definitely agree with Eric that the people in Dunbarton are very smart. We have a lot of very intelligent people in town. However, I do disagree with it when you say, you know, you comment about it gives them time to learn. Most people don't have the time or take the time to learn. They get the town report, they read it, if they're lucky, they read it. They come to town meeting to learn what's going on and have that discussion like everybody's been talking about, and to actually learn what's happening. You're gonna find that I think most people are gonna read the town report, probably be uninformed on the pros and cons of a particular warrant article. We're gonna go on a ballot and it's gonna sound good, they're gonna go yes, and then they're gonna find the unintended consequences later on is that they didn't learn what they really should have learned about it and voted the other way. And they're gonna regret doing that. I think that's where you get a lot of this regret that we're hearing from other towns why they have SB two. That's just my 2 cents, I'm just throwing it out there. Go ahead, Mike.
You know, I've been to almost every town meeting since I became president. And the thing is, I have never seen a warrant go through without an amendment or amendment challenge. And the problem is, if you only have 3 to a dozen people making, the public can't really give adequate input if they go SB two. A town meeting allows, I don't think any warrant has ever gone through without a challenge.
Yeah.
A few, but they're usually the simple ones, like take the interest out of the town.
Right, the simple ones, but the thing is that, there's been many important warrants with a change on the spot, on the fly right there. And it requires
Changing amounts, changing the,
Yeah.
what's going to happen. Yeah,
three
absolutely.
people or a dozen
I
people.
see, John.
3 people or a dozen people. It's kinda scary that they're gonna make the final determination when you know, that's a real challenge.
Yeah, you do. John?
Yeah, just to add to that, my first town meetings here were in the 80s, you know, and I came out of Jersey, California, Alabama, whatever, you know, right? But at first, I'm sitting there And the guy stands up and he starts ranting about stuff. I'm thinking, what?
That's
But
normal.
then being a reasonably patient person, I listened a little bit further, and 2 or 3 other people got up, and there amounted to a discussion, and it changed how I would vote. Without that discussion, I would have not had certain facts that I needed. And, just to pass that on.
Well, that's what I mean, to be honest with you, I've seen it happen time and time again, people come to town meetings thinking they're gonna vote one way, and then all of a sudden they have a discussion like, oh, I didn't even think of that, I didn't know that. That's where they learn about these warrant articles. Alright, I saw a hand over here, Janet, and then I saw, okay, Ron, you're right behind Larry, I couldn't quite catch
I'm
that.
hiding behind Larry.
Well, no, I saw a hand.
That way if you throw anything, I can duck it.
I'm not throwing anything. Go ahead, Janet.
The warrant article that's in your minutes
Mm-hmm,
has no zero tax impact.
correct.
Will that have a tax impact when it gets into the?
I think it's one of those, in theory, it has zero tax impact, but I think as we were discussing it, I think we're finding there's gonna be an actual.
We need a thorough cost. A lot of people make their decisions
Mhm.
on that tax impact.
No, I think you're.
And if it's big, it ought to be on there.
Mhm.
You're not an informed voter if you don't know what that is.
I made a couple questions, like machine costs, and then, meetings with official costs, I mean, that's all added costs that we're not gonna take and, put in here, then, you're right, then we don't know what it's gonna cost, and again, unintended consequences.
Nobody should be asked to vote on it if they don't know what the taxes are.
Hold on,
Can you-
Fred,
yeah.
I'm sorry, Ron?
A lot of the arguments I've heard for the last 2 days, and also the arguments I heard back in previous times SB2 came through, the arguments against SB2, I can turn that around and use that exact same arguments against town hall meetings.
Mhm.
It's the exact same reasons, it's the exact same cause,
Mhm.
it's governed by a minority. People can choose to show up or not show up, it's not our fault if people are lazy and don't bother to get off their duff to show up to the meetings.
Mhm.
Why all this, and you can't blame this on SB2. Deliberative session is town hall. You can do the same thing there that you can do at a town hall meeting. There's a difference. You now got a safety net afterwards. And that you now have a larger vote by the whole town on what that deliberative session. If I had a town hall meeting and we could come in later and cast a ballot and get a larger turnout, it'd be the same thing. People gotta stop, disassociating. I'd be curious in these towns, why, if they went to town hall, they decide not to go to a deliberative session? It's the same thing, it's the same meeting, you have the same roles, responsibilities, and capabilities. You do the same thing, you have the dialogue, you can change your mind and say, at the end of that meeting, oh, I'm in favor of this. But now that that's cast more firmly, you get a larger population. The whole issues of the town are not decided by as little as 3 to 5 votes difference between for and against. I've been to school district meetings where if you had 40 people there, you were really good.
Yep.
I've been to other ones that was a crowded house.
Mhm.
I've been to town hall meetings where, you had a very small turnout and serious dollars were tossed around at warrants and there was no safety net to say, what does the majority of the town think? And you use this argument about, well, towns couldn't get rid of it. Well, who in the town wanted to get rid of it? Obviously, the majority didn't, or it would have been voted out. I think you're looking at cases where certain special interests say, well, I don't like this way of working. I can't get the budget, I can't get the money I wanna see. But the majority says, fine, this is the way we're gonna vote. And that's the thing I don't see allowed in town meetings, school district meetings. The majority really aren't there. It's a minority every time that votes for those.
Yeah, I understand. I
So
think part of it's
if people
perception.
say they wanna be involved, then show up that are gonna show up to the town meeting. I wouldn't stop because it's a deliberative meeting. I've been coming to town hall meetings since I arrived in town 15 years ago. So I just go to a deliberative session instead, but it's the same thing.
No, I don't disagree, I think just last week I got on my soapbox about apathy of people coming to meetings and participating in government. I mean, you get what you get.
And there are ways, if you have things that, certain people feel are important enough, there are ways of doing the PR to get people to either show up to deliberative or change the way they vote. I've done it before in previous locations where issues were that important, you went into a PR mode and you got the movement going. You don't sit on your duff and wait.
I mean, I think, you know, my personal opinion, I think, you know, the difference between deliberative session and town meeting, I think it's a perception. You know, you're right, they're pretty much virtually
Same thing.
identical. But when they hear deliberative session, they just think it's just another public hearing and they just blow it off, the voter apathy. When they hear town meeting, for some reason, it just seems to resonate with them and most people show up. Jeff?
I think that the difference is, with the deliberative session, people don't have to show up. Town meeting, or school district meeting, they have to show up if they wanna vote, and so they're compelled.
That's true.
And I think that's why you have a difference.
Mhm.
SB2, somebody last night said it's like a bad tattoo. You know, you think it's a good idea, but then you're stuck with it forever. So it sounds like a good idea, but then, you know, I look at what other towns are doing and how other towns have experienced it, and the deliberative, people who show up for the deliberative session just drop sight off. The folks who end up voting aren't necessarily as well informed as if they were at a school district meeting or a town meeting. They don't get to hear those arguments. Some choose to be informed, others don't. And look at what the state had to do with bond voting. It used to be state law, it was a 2/3 majority everywhere, but then after 6 or 7 years of SB2, not a single SB2 town could pass a bond and hit that high threshold. Because a lot of people show up, they're just voting their pocketbook, they don't get to hear why this is needed or necessary. So they had to lower the threshold to 60% in SB2 towns. And it's because you've got people who come to vote, who stand in that voting booth and you say, okay, I check this box, my taxes don't go up, I check that box, my taxes do go up. Well, I'm gonna check this one, without understanding perhaps what the need is that warrant article is supposed to cover. And I got that same concern that you mentioned, it's about, you know, informed voters. I would much rather have 200 or 300 people come to town meetings, school district meetings, hear the argument, be informed of both sides, make those decisions. I've got nothing to fear from a well-informed public vote. I've got a lot to fear for uninformed people who are voting on these things that affect our community.
Fred?
Yeah, and you said you wanted to check on the cost of a ballot machine.
Yes.
Also, you should add into that cost, what's the cost of a certified technician that has to certify that and seal it? The moderator's cost is pennies, so that's, you know, nothing.
You're very valuable to us.
I know, pennies.
Would the ballots be different too?
The ballots be
More
different?
Cost to the ballot?
Well, I'm assuming the ballots that they're gonna have is like Leo brought up, you're talking, they're gonna be different than what we're used to now. I have no idea what that's gonna entail.
I've got a couple ballots I can circulate.
But it's the cost.
I'm not really sure what the machines have, how this affects either pro or con in this whole discussion, but I do have a question for the selectmen. Normally, when we do go to town meeting and we vote on, or we discuss the warrant articles, there's usually a line under it that says that the selectmen support or don't support this. Is there a position on SB2 from the selectmen?
Yeah,
Yeah, we're gonna vote on
no,
whether we recommend it or not after the discussion.
I see.
you're talking about SB2 warrant articles in general, just about?
Yes. on-
Yeah, there is.
I'll pass this all around you.
And there is,
Pass it.
whether the planning board recommends it or,
But we haven't come to that decision yet, though.
No.
correct,
Okay.
an hour warrant.
Yeah.
So I have a question, currently at the meetings, one thing, sometimes people do change their minds, as you said, when they come in thinking one thing and then they hear arguments and change it. If you have a deliberative session that doesn't have the weight of people knowing they're gonna vote, as we're hearing, there are very few people that go to those. I think Jeff, you mentioned Goffstown, which is a bigger town than ours, what was it, 6 people at the deliberative session?
You got a population of about 22,
Right.
2,400, about 4,000 people.
Right, so you won't have the opportunity there to have arguments, discussions about, oh, wow, I think I should change my mind about that, or some of the amendments that happen on the floor based on the discussion, where we've actually added or subtracted amounts based on the discussion. And I'm thinking of the town roof, for one, and the town hall roof, that year when there was a proposal for one thing, and people said, well, wait a minute, you know, you didn't tell us what you were gonna, you didn't have any options, and in that meeting, there was a change in the decision made about what to do, and it changed what the original warrant was. If you only have about 10 or 15, 20 people at these deliberative sessions, that probably wouldn't happen. Or the warrant article they could vote to go zero on a warrant article. And that's what goes forward to the rest of the people. And so, you know, you don't know, it may not happen in Dunbarton, but you just, potentially that could happen.
Yep.
So, that's something I noticed happens a lot in the town meetings.
Jeff?
I'm a traditionalist as well. I enjoy town meeting. I moved here from Manchester and I didn't even know people across the street. I know pretty much everybody on my street and a lot of folks in town, just because the community gets together for these events and it's a good way to get people involved in the meeting. Without it, and of course nobody showing up to the deliberative sessions, you know, I think the community changes. People aren't getting together like we do now to talk about things. Instead, maybe there's emails flying back and forth, or people posting blogs or whatever, and, you know, it's none of the face-to-face give and take discussion, you know, civil discourse that, you know, we come to expect at town meeting. I'm thoroughly disgusted with our state and federal government and how they act, you know, beat up on each other all the time, and I think that's part of it. People don't get together to talk,
Yeah, without dissension, you wouldn't have democracy.
you know?
But it could be civil dissension.
Yeah, and so I would miss that. I really enjoy the town meeting. The other thing, being on the school board, I get a lot of feedback at town meeting. The board gets a lot of feedback. You folks do too. You hear the discussion, you hear what people are thinking, and how they're voting. On SB 2, you may not know why they voted this down and not that. What kind of feedback do you get from the public when you can't have that conversation with them? Should you bring this warrant article back again? Did they misunderstand it? Why did they vote that down? You don't really know. And so I appreciate that being on the school board, hearing from our public at school district meetings and town meetings.
Yeah, Margaret.
I agree with most of what's been said in favor of retaining town meeting. I think hearing what people have to say gives you a sense of the temper of the town. I think that SB 2 could actually consolidate power and reduce a democracy, because it's a very small group of people who are making the decisions. You get a recommendation from the planning board or the selectmen. It's very, very hard to find out what's going on in this town and to learn about the issues, because there's just very little communication in the town, particularly if people aren't really engaged in the town, which I think is a lot of the people who can't make the time to come to town meeting. They're not gonna make the time to learn about the issues. And when you go into the booth, there's no discussion, there's no sharing of ideas, there's no potential for amending an issue or learning more about it. You're just going in, you're voting yes or no. It's not like voting for a candidate or voting for President of the United States, where we had more than enough information for many months to figure out who we were gonna vote for. And we get plenty of information on candidates. But I can see either just sort of going along with the selectmen, or if you're pissed with the selectmen, going against the selectmen and being totally uninformed, or people sending out mailers who care really strongly about some issue, and you sort of go with the information in the mailer, whether it's accurate or not, or whether it really reflects what's in the broader interests of the community. My other concern is that we will lose volunteers, because town meeting is a place to see people face to face. It's an opportunity for people to volunteer counting ballots, and we would absolutely lose that if we go to SB 2, because there's no way volunteers can count all those articles. And this town is built on volunteers. We save a lot of money by having volunteers do the work that otherwise we would pay people to do, and I think that would be a huge, huge loss. And at the school meeting last year, there was an issue came up with the boys' bathroom, and I think that was gonna be voted down, and then a group of people said, well, but it's really important, we gotta do something about the bathroom. And a group of volunteers said, okay, we'll help. And, Jeff got a list of all the people who said they'd help, and there's a new boys' bathroom. And,
Girls
and
do too.
girls, and, you know, that probably would have been voted down, and, you know, that puts the school in a really awkward position, and at some point, we probably would have gotten cited for it. So I think those discussions are really, really important, and it's, you know, it's once a year, it's always the same night. You can plan a year in advance to be there, and I would be very sad to see the town meeting go.
Any other comments, questions, concerns? Gentlemen, it's a public hearing, you're part of the public as well, you wanna weigh in? Ron?
Again, the deliberative session is the same as the town hall. Just because we go to a deliberative session instead of a town hall, the same people can show up, the same numbers. My question would be, who here who goes to a town hall would stop going because it's now a deliberative session? You have the same voice, the same opportunity to voice your concerns, the same opportunity to socialize. It can be all the same people, it just happens to have a different name. It's not all of a sudden SB2, oh, we can't go to that. It's the same thing.
Can I ask a question? I'm from an SB two town, I don't live in Dunbarton yet, but
Yet, that's a
my
good thing,
question
that
is,
you're going to.
these deliberative sessions, I live in Dunbarton, I'm in the forgotten, I'm in Goffstown, I'm in the forgotten east side of Dunbarton. I'm busy, I work 9 to 5 or 8 to 4, and I don't have time to get involved with the SB two, the committees, at the deliberative session, is it already cut in stone that these warrants are?
No, that's what
Or
you
is
think
that
happened.
when, can they, just like here with the board listening to the public, I wanna remove that from the warrant, or I think it should be increased or decreased, that's what your deliberative session, so
Just
I
the
agree
same
with you,
thing you
it's the
do in a
same
town
as a
hall
town-
meeting.
I
I like the
agree.
warrant, I don't like it, I wanna amend it up or down, I wanna
Yeah.
change the verbiage,
Yeah.
or vote yes or no. It's the same thing.
And I'm a lot of times not available to go to those deliberative sessions, I've never been.
Then would you
And
go to a town hall
It makes it
meeting?
difficult for me to,
You'd have the same problem.
to vote as an informed voter on that ballot, when I have to fill that ballot out. And I go every year to vote, a lot of times I'm misinformed, and if it's what I get in the mail, and I'm hoping that the information that's on that notice is accurate, then I can make a better decision, but I'm making maybe the wrong decision.
The only reason you attend is that a deliberative session will be less than people attending the town hall is people decide to get lazy and not show up.
So
That's
why
the only
is
reason to be less. There is no other restriction on who and cannot be there.
And
That's
they'll
the
be
only-
lazy and just go in and check off, no on a ballot, because they don't need to take the time to understand the
That's right,
issue.
That's their right.
That's the danger, is that they won't understand it.
And you think everybody who
Okay,
voted
gentlemen,
Tuesday
gentlemen.
night understands what they were
Whoa,
voting
having
for?
too much crosstalk, I mean, I don't mind having a little bit, cause we're, you know, it's a small.
It's a deliberative session.
No, it's a public hearing, and technically, the conversation runs through this table here. But I just don't wanna get too much crosstalk, cause I have a hand raised, and I wanna make sure everybody has a chance to be heard.
I was polite, I was raising my hand.
Sorry, Jeff, we're just gonna throw stuff at you.
You know, Ron is absolutely correct. You know, folks who show up for town meeting can show up for the deliberative session. The history always showed us that people don't, and that's the reality. And as much as we think that SB two, it sounds great and it looks good on paper and it should work, look at all the other communities where it doesn't work, where people don't show up for the deliberative session. So they've got every right they can, and perhaps Dunbarton may have a higher percentage than other SB two towns, but still, it just drops off more and more each year till it reaches some bottom number of a dozen or 2 dozen, depending upon the size of the community. Londonderry, huge town, they had 49, I read in the paper, at their deliberative session. So that's the reality.
That's disturbing,
Yeah, it is.
personally. Ralph?
Lean, you said you come from a SB two town,
Yeah.
so when you go in to vote, do you vote no on everything that raises taxes?
I have. When they had the bottom line say that it was gonna increase my taxes by $5, it angered me that they're already in the mid-20s and they're gonna raise my taxes again, you know, for new fire trucks and everything was already printed. I
So-
had a yes or no vote.
Yeah, but I mean,
I was not an informed voter, let's put it that way, because I didn't get involved with the deliberative session. Sometimes it's on a Tuesday night or a
Same as.
So you didn't make any phone calls to anyone?
But prior, there's meetings, there's budget meetings and there's committees that form those, numbers,
So I think there's
craft that.
I think there's kind of a misconception. Take away deliberative.
Yep.
You still have a town hall.
Mhm.
The only difference is, some of the studies actually that were done in New Hampshire show that participation in deliberative sessions is opposite of population in town. Towns with a greater population have less people show up.
That's right,
Towns
yeah.
with a smaller population have more people show up. So you don't lose that community good feeling, as you will. As you can see, even by the numbers that this town produces at town hall and school district meetings, those numbers are low already, okay? The minority is already voting on the issues of town, so they're already crafting it. Now, I came from an SB2 town, and yes, I did not attend the deliberative sessions, but they had opportunities for people to talk to the Board of Selectmen, and you could go to the meetings, to the budget meetings, you could hear what they have put in the budget, why they think it's good. You can talk to other people in town, you can get a feel for what you think you're gonna vote for. People did not always vote no for everything that was a cost increase. Bedford's a perfect example, they're a much bigger community than us, they wouldn't have built a high school without SB2. People voted to build that high school, and that's a huge ticket item, you would think people would be voting no.
No, that's because they didn't like West.
Well, that was his.
Let's be real, they didn't like West, they had a lot of snide people and not a lot of.
I went to West with a bunch of those Bedford people many years ago. And,
I went
yes,
to
it's
West
gone
Side,
downhill,
I don't wanna go with it.
yeah, it's gone downhill, but that's neither here nor there.
Ralph, you all set? Ron?
Well, like here, what was it, last week, week before? We're a town hall meeting, structure here. The selectmen held a budget hearing. There were what, 12, 15 of us here?
About that?
Half of them were the department heads who were requesting the money. There were only a handful of us who were here who had no vested interest in what the budget did, other than it comes out of our pockets. That's with a town hall structure. And yet we're complaining not that many would show up for a deliberative session. We got the same problem now, lack of turnout. I mean, when I can, I try to attend selectmen meetings because I like, ahead of time, because I like to know what you're thinking before we even get to the budget hearing.
I like to know what I'm thinking too.
Yeah, and other people do too. I'm always reading the minutes, so I guess I'm one of those ones who likes to be informed of what's going on, not just come here to heckle you guys,
I
so.
wish we had more of you like that.
And there's a few others, so, I mean, I wanted to get to the school budget hearing, unfortunately I had a conflict that night and I couldn't get there, but I usually attend those as well.
We had about 50.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Well, you're a bigger dollar item, so it's better for you.
We usually don't have that.
I know.
It's unusual.
We usually have 5.
Yeah.
So I think the issue is bigger than just SB2. One of the statistics I'd be curious in hearing of these towns that did adopt SB2 before, were their town hall meeting attendances in a decline anyways?
That's
And
one of the-
they went into, and they said this would be a better way of government because town hall just was
Let's be on the
declining.
same wavelength, 'cause I have a question on my thing to take a look into that town meeting versus the deliberative session, find out what's, you know, the numbers,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, so.
I think the issue to solve would be in those towns that are SB2, and even if we adopt it here, what can we do to get people to show up to the deliberative session, which is a town hall, that we're showing at the town hall, why did they change their mind and say, oh, I don't need to go anymore? And keep that attendance going, which is a whole different ballgame. That's a little more motivational kind of thing you need to consider.
All right, I seem to be hearing circular arguments, so unless we're gonna take and, develop any new thoughts or questions, I think we're gonna move on to the next article. Everybody good with that? All right. Thank you folks for your input, that was, I think, a good discussion. Article number 6 on the warrant is to see if the town will vote to adopt the provisions of RSA 32:5-B and implement a tax cap whereby the governing body or budget committee shall not submit a recommended budget that increases the amount to be raised by local taxes based on the prior fiscal year's actual amount of local taxes raised by more than 2.5% by petition, 3/5 ballot vote, town meeting required. In other words, it's not gonna go on the ballot like the SB2, it's actually gonna be discussed at town meeting, and there will be a secret ballot that everybody will have to take and vote yea or nay, and put in the ballot box, and the ballot box will be open for an hour.
Minimum of 1 hour.
Yeah, minimum, I mean, obviously, but town meeting, I've never seen anybody not take an hour. It usually goes pretty quick, I mean, within a half hour or so, where everybody's got their ballots in the box.
See, it says at least an hour,
Mhm.
and my moderator's handbook says, one town got taken to court because they did it 59 minutes. No, it's really, and that's why it should be at least an hour.
Yep.
That's why I always go 65 minutes, 70 minutes,
That's fine.
that's the reason.
You're the man in charge, that's what we're gonna go with.
No, that's what, but the RSA does state at least an hour, and that's the reason why, I understand.
So Ralph, this was your petition, so I'll let you have the floor first.
Yeah, I don't have much, it's just that, because we had this big jump this year, so a lot of people were angry. So I looked up what RSA would allow us to do this and put it forward to the board here. So basically, my argument is that the taxpayers have a right to expect, and that this board has a moral obligation to provide for moderate tax increases, not spikes and you know, ebbs and high points, you know. The biggest thing is that this 2.5% increase is in excess of the annual rate of inflation since the recession. So I'm not asking you to cap spending at below what inflation is. You shouldn't have any problem with this. I realize that a lot of warrant articles are out of your control, but you do have the authority to either advise for or against it, you know, before we have our town meeting. And then my biggest thing that, I was at the transfer station and I had these, you know, I had people coming up to sign this petition. And the biggest thing I got from people was that they're, not only had, you know, they had this big increase in taxes, but their mortgage had gone up $50 to $75 because, like if you're a $6,000 a year tax, well, that's $50 a month that your taxes went up. I forget how they did that, but whatever it was. But, so now, a lot of people didn't have the money in their escrow accounts because they had such a huge increase in taxes. So not only did they get an increase in their monthly mortgage payment, but they got a bill for $300, $400, $500 because they didn't have enough money in their escrow accounts. Now, this is really hurting people on fixed income, whether it be senior citizens or disability or whatnot. They got no cost of living increase last year. So I don't think it's unreasonable to see a 2.5% tax cap. And see a moderate, you know, a level plane of increases, if you will, rather than the big spike that we had.
Can I ask a question? When you say the big spike, I mean, are you talking about the tax rate?
We had a big spike. I went up $800 with my assessed value going down. That's a big spike.
Because,
I'd have to look at your assessment too.
What's that?
yeah,
A lot of people confuse prior year and the second half, first bill,
Right.
and the second half as an increase. Your first bill, July bill, is 50% of the prior
I
year.
understand how it works.
So,
I
you have to add
understand
the
how
two
it works.
together to determine if you've increased, if your taxes
What is
went up.
10%? Is that a big increase or a small increase?
Is that including warrant articles?
If you got a 10% decrease in pay, would you be happy with that?
Is that including warrant articles? Because
It
there's a
includes everything.
combination, there's
It
a
includes
reval.
all monies, it includes all monies raised by taxes.
This warrant only applies to the appropriation, the warrant article,
it applies to the operating budget,
that's it.
not warrant articles.
I believe,
Well,
know.
have you checked with your attorney?
Yeah.
Applies to everything.
Because we're getting the opposite.
Yeah.
At the school, what we certify and goes to the state is Form MS 26. And MS 26 shows all of your appropriations on the entire warrant, plus all of your estimated revenues, and the difference is what you estimate to be raised by local taxes. And that, you compare to the prior year with that tax cap, that is how that affects it.
So that's what works in everything.
Not just the operating budget.
Not the word we got.
That's not what we've got it in writing too, that the 2.5 is only on the budget itself,
Yeah,
not
we don't
on
have
the
it.
warrants.
That's not the way I would be.
Yeah, do you have a particular form that you folks sign?
MS
Yeah.
26. That's what you're certifying, is that MS 26, and at the very bottom of it is the amount to be raised by local taxes. which is the difference of your total appropriations on your warrant.
Find out
Your
which-
revenue.
Total of the town warrant.
We'll have to figure out which lawyer's right.
Yeah,
But you read it, it says, based on the prior
Right.
fiscal
No, I
year's
understand.
actual amount of local taxes raised. It
Which
doesn't
include,
say raise for the budget, it says raise, period.
Well, I know the RSA speaks to exactly what it includes and doesn't include.
and I'm gonna jump on with Ralph here. I think what he's saying is, not the tax rate, but dollars. I mean, my taxes went up 10%. I mean, in dollars. The rate went way up because of the revaluation, but,
The reevaluation, we lost $10.5 million of reevaluation.
and I hear that all the time, but that has absolutely nothing to do with the amount of money that was spent, or that was, forecast to be spent, and therefore had to raise those taxes. You know what I'm saying? We lost $10 million worth of assessed value, that's fine. And that
That's not
affects
fine.
the tax rate, that's fine. We still have to raise the same amount of taxes. We have to raise a certain figure. That didn't change.
No,
So it doesn't matter where the town assessment is, and it doesn't matter where the tax rate is. You still have to get to that figure, whether it's on the school side, it's roughly $6 million. I forget what the town is, two whatever it is.
$2 million.
Yeah. You still have to get to that figure, so that's beside the point, you know, what the
It changes,
total
it
assessment
actually
value
changes
of
the
the
whole,
town.
it changes the tax rate, and then it depends on your valuation, and then you do all the multiplication, I mean, it does, you know, there is a cause and effect there.
Can I see if I can find my email response, cause I think I
Yeah,
got it from
sure.
the DRA.
Go ahead.
as
So
well.
Mike, then we'll go with Fred.
Good.
Yeah, I'm concerned, is there any contingencies, if we had an emergency where we had to raise dollars, whether it be inflation, the building burned down, or we needed extra cash for an emergency, would the hands be tied by the selectmen of making?
Unassigned fund balance, i.e. the rainy day fund that we have.
Right, but the thing is, that's a set amount.
Right, and there is a way for us to take and go to the Department of Revenue Administration to take and raise more taxes if there was a true emergency that we need to do that with.
Even with this cap,
I believe so.
okay.
you can also, at your deliberative session of your SB two, or at your town meeting from the floor, you can always amend any of the warrant articles, and what the tax cap does is it limits what you can propose on the warrant in dollar amounts. So you may not be able to put certain warrant articles up there because you're hitting that tax cap. So it's whatever you propose, but from the floor, changes can be made that would exceed the tax cap. So that, you know, folks have an opportunity to still make adjustments to the warrant that's proposed.
Right, because it says you're not submitting a recommended budget.
That's it, it's the recommended budget is the warrant, yeah.
Fred?
Yeah, I got a question for Jeff. You were saying that this form you fill out, Jeff, is gonna be the bottom line you're raising for taxes? Like on the warrant this year, there's a teacher's contract, is that part of that same
Yes.
thing?
Here, I've got an MS-26.
Yeah.
And, it lists, at least on the school side, all the appropriations that are being proposed, and then you have to categorize them, and Dean knows all about that. So you get the total appropriations that are on the warrant, all your warrant articles and everything. Here's your special articles, individual warrant articles, you add all that together, then you go and you have your estimated revenues from all these different sources and all their account codes. And at the very last page in your budget summary, you have your operating and budget appropriations, your special warrant articles recommended, individual warrant articles recommended, total appropriations recommended, less amount of estimated revenues and credits, less amount of state, this is state school tax. The bottom line, estimated amount of taxes to be raised. That's for the school, that's our local school taxes, and for the town, that's our town taxes. And this is the form that you guys sign,
Yep.
which I think in the law is where they say, as shown on the budget certified by the governing body or the budget committee and posted with the warrant for the annual meeting. I think that's what you're looking at, and it's that bottom line, amount of taxes to be raised. So you gotta compare that to last year's bottom line. But you also get to, if you appropriated or if you applied any of your fund balance to reduce taxes the year before, you can add that back in, and that's what you multiply by 2.5% to determine the capital.
So it'd be
That's my understanding.
Yeah, from what the RSA reads, that it's the 2.5% applies to the actual amount spent, raised by taxes, not what was actually spent. So, like Jeff said, the unassigned fund balance coming back, but that's, it basically says, or it doesn't basically say, it does say, on the actual amount of taxes raised, that the 2.5% cap applies to.
Any other discussion?
You know, to me, it's asking the selectmen just to be responsible in the budget development, that's what it's asking, very simply, just provide us a responsible budget.
The problem is generally the budget is responsible, it's the warrant articles that end up adding. I'm talking about just your regular fixed costs and whatnot,
Yep.
salaries and office expenses, all that stuff. It's the warrant articles that can get out of control sometimes when people, like, if we'd have passed that, the restoration project last year over here, I mean, we'd have had a huge hit. It'd have been disastrous for me, for everybody, I think.
Ron?
And I think the other thing with responsible budgets is you're talking about, depends on who the selectmen are. I mean, you know, something like this supersedes who the players are at the table. I mean, I've appreciated what Ted's been doing the last few years and what you gentlemen have been doing to say level budgets, level budgets. I've been here before when we've had pretty hefty spendthrifts on the board of selectmen. Oh yeah, let's just raise this and we're gonna increase this person's salary 25% and we're gonna go spend this and this and this. You don't have much option to veto that, because then by the time you get to town meeting, well, you can do something to affect the overall budget, but you can't ding or lower departments or specified line items because it's a total sum budget. So I see something like this as trying to rein in the craziness that occurs from time to time, because you guys won't be on there forever.
That's true. Jeff?
How much did the town raise in local taxes